everybody likes to say, oh, well, it's just cheap labor in China. That's why they can do what they do. I mean, 15 years ago, when we started manufacturing in China, we were going and visiting factories, and like it was a dirt floor, and we're like, this is not acceptable, and having that sort of thing was going on. That's not the case anymore. I mean, you show up and it's just robots everywhere, and people are working their butts off to try to keep up with the robot.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have Sebastien Gouin-Davis with me. He is the CEO of a company that's going through a little bit of a name change right now. Originally they were Amatis, and now they are Loom, Luum.io. And what they do is very, very interesting. They're giving manufacturing companies 100% visibility into their electricity usage, their lights, their devices. And so they are really helping companies really optimize their operations and then gather a lot of data that they couldn't before. So welcome to Manufacturing Insider, Sebastien.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nate.
Absolutely. Before I get too far into it, I'd just like to let you know, if you are enjoying our content and if you like this podcast, give us a subscribe on our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, and a variety of other platforms. Listen to us on your way to work. If you're a leader in manufacturing and you feel that you have some insights that other leaders would benefit from, go to manufacturinginsiders.com, fill out the form there, and we'd love to have you on. So, Sebastien, you have such an interesting background story. I'd like to start there. So you started out as a pilot or a pilot in training, and then somehow you ended up into a CEO position in the technology space. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, I even spent a lot of money becoming a pilot. I did all my instrument rated private pilot at 350 hours, borrowed a ton of money in college to do that, and did all my commercial training. I think when I got into flying, going into school, it's what we do school in kind of a weird way. People who are super entrepreneurial and a little ADHD, you don't really know what to go to school for. And I thought flying would be cool. And so I did it. And it was such a steep learning curve that I was having a really good time doing it. But at some point, a few years in, I realized this engineering thing was kind of cool. I took math classes and physics classes, and had a guy that I knew that I actually babysat his kids while I was going to school. And he got me to come work for him, just moving stuff around manufacturing side of the business, counting things, etc. Became friends with engineers, solved some problems, realized engineering was a lot more mentally engaging than actually flying a plane. Learning how to fly is super mentally engaging, but once you got it figured out, it's sort of whatever people say, it's like driving a school bus. It's probably not quite like that, but it's definitely not engineering, right? Where there's a new problem every minute. And so whatever, one thing led to another, and I was low on cash going to school, and at the same time had a job, and had some really awesome mentors. I kind of learned engineering, I think the way that we used to learn more things, like as almost like an apprenticeship. Had some people that kind of took me under their wings. We live in a world where even 15 years ago, I could go home and Google stuff, right? I basically made a list every day of stuff that somebody said that I didn't know what it meant. Right. Go home, look it up, come back the next day, and I could hang in the conversation, right? So, and then, a similar thing, just there was a need for me to be the CEO. And so I had been in a sort of a number 2 position for years, and figured I could figure that out too. And here we are.
Yeah. So you were involved in this business for quite a while beforehand, and has it always been kind of on the lighting side of things? Like, how did it evolve over time?
Yeah, it's interesting that there were kind of 2 things in the beginning. The company was as it exists today, was pretty much founded to solve a problem for another company that I worked for. So I was involved in the company on the customer side, basically, product manager effectively for the lighting controls product that we were building. So we were selling low voltage lighting even back then, different system, different company. Mm-hmm. Next Tech Power Systems was the name of the company, and we needed a lighting control solution. And so the guy that originally started the company was connected to another guy that's still involved in the company. And started building this, but at the same time, there was a need for, they saw a need for the wireless technology also in the like energy metering space. So we had all sorts of energy metering products for the residential space, and that's just we realized within a few years that was a market that we didn't want to be in. You know, you sell one device and you get a whole customer.
Right.
And we'd get calls all day for, you know, my stuff's not working, and people that couldn't find the login page and everything. Where in the commercial lighting space, we can sell a whole project, right? 100,000 square foot building, and we'd still get one customer. And so that's where we decided to focus. I think we also had a better value prop there. That was where we were really differentiating both on cost and functionality. And so we kind of fine tuned it into lighting, and really focused on the wireless lighting piece for years. And it was just about 3 years ago where we started getting into the low voltage power distribution and control ourselves, and leveraging kind of the experience that we had with partners where we had been doing these types of projects, but only on the control side.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is how we got to where we were. We kind of watched the low voltage. We believed as a company that low voltage wiring and power for lighting especially, but also for all sorts of loads, just made sense. I mean, our cell phones, laptops, everything, right? They have a wall wart that is converting the AC power that's coming in to low voltage DC. And that's different, right? 100 years ago, that's not the type of loads that we were connecting to the grid. We were connecting big motors and incandescent light bulbs. And so it just makes sense to distribute that voltage that all of the devices in the building need, right? Including LED light fixtures. But what we were just watching people do a bad job of it for a long time, and finally said, if we were to do this, how would we do it? And really started from the bottom, and ended up with the product that we have today.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So when you look at like the average manufacturing facility, I would think that a lot of these owners would kind of say it's lights. It's not that big of a deal in the context of the machinery that I'm running. I guess what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, everybody's fighting for every little bit of margin that you can get. And, beyond just the energy savings, which I've got a good answer to, long term, you're going to be replacing your light fixtures. Like, these are just these operational things that they're not the kind of thing you want to be innovating on as a manufacturing company, right? You want to focus on delivering a product to your customers, and
Right.
you just want to not have to think about these things. So number one is, if you can install a solution that's not going to cause you headaches for the next 10 or 20 years, right? Where with our low voltage tech, you can extend the life expectancy of a light fixture by like 400%, right? So now 20 years goes by before you have to get back on a lift or have someone come in to make lights turn on or replace light fixtures that are failing.
Yep.
Obviously, if you have downtime in the factory because you don't have the lighting working correctly, that has huge financial impacts. But the other thing is, I think people, they just don't realize how much energy is going to the light fixtures, especially if they're on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have a facility that's kind of a mixed use where we did a project a few years ago. It's just lighting controls. About half of it's warehouse space, and half of it is sort of manufacturing and rework floors. And yeah, their warehouse space, if all the lights are on, it's costing them about $300 a day in electrical energy, right? So yeah, when they get pretty fussy when the lights aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. And what we do in those sorts of applications is we have sensors at the end of each aisle, and we dim the lights down to a minimum level during the day. It doesn't have to be pitch black, right? You can dim them down to 10%. You're still saving 90% of the energy. Mm-hmm. And then when someone comes in, or it's a forklift or whatever, the lights will ramp back up, and then you can aggressively ramp them back down. And one other random thing, like, people don't know, there's a lot of this sort of snowball thing happening with technology these days in the energy saving space. But back in the day, metal halide light bulbs, the old ones that would like take time to warm up,
Right.
and fluorescent fixtures, they didn't like to be dimmed. It reduced the life expectancy of them to be dimmed. Oh no, my camera's taken over. But modern LEDs, actually running them dim will actually reduces or extends their life expectancy. Okay. So, now you get this double benefit of actually dimming the lights, you're saving energy, but they're running cooler, and so they last longer. So ultimately it boils down to, do you like saving money? If it's a no-brainer, like a lot of what we do these days with the controls piece, you can do that as a retrofit. With the low voltage wiring, that's going to be more of a new construction piece, but probably there's a lot of savings that you're leaving on the table that, it's just because it's not measured. If it's not measured, you don't even know what's going on, right?
Right. Yeah. So, is there kind of like a base? Well, I think the one thing that you talked about before, which is a sort of a big value add, and one of the reasons maybe that a lot of companies don't take a closer look at it is they say the investment that I'm going to have to make into fixing the problem is going to take too long to recoup. And so you guys are kind of flipping that on its head, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the goal, is to try to make the investment sort of a no-brainer. I mean, it's still going to be money, but you're not talking about 30 to 100% premium on what you're spending it on. I think the other thing to think about, a lot of manufacturing businesses have not a lot of them, but I think more than some other types of businesses, they've been around for a while in a lot of cases. And so they can think a little bit longer term than, say, startup tech company, right? That has a plan to exit in 2 years, or maybe has a 4-year lease on an office space, right? These are very short-term thinking. When you look long-term, I mean, electrical prices the price of electricity is going to continue to go up. And so, what that means is that your energy savings today, it's actually going to be an appreciating asset over time. That alone is a big deal. I think then it goes down to, well, historically it's been really challenging or it's too complicated. I think we've simplified a lot of that stuff. And yeah, I mean, it really is like, if you can think more than 3 years into the future, then you're just going to be sort of printing money. Again, if you can get to the point of, if you're saving hundreds of dollars a day for 10 years, right? That turns into a lot of savings over time. And it's a snowball. You don't have the maintenance guy necessarily walking around switching out light bulbs every day, and all of the headaches that go into these things. You get all that time back, right?
Right. Is there sort of an average facility size, or kind of a baseline facility size that you would look at and say, this is really something you need to implement? Like if you have a small shop with 5 lights, I mean, who?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, anything in the 20,000 square foot range or bigger, which, is probably still considered small in the manufacturing world, is, I think it's going to make sense. I think in a lot of cases, though, what we do scales pretty well. So you're not buying a lot of, like, we don't sell a $5,000 server, for example. All of it is distributed logic and everything. So you don't have this like big upfront cost that gets distributed more.
Right.
So it does scale pretty well, but there's no question that, like you said, if it's just, one small little room in the back and a couple of offices in front, then it's probably not your biggest headache. You're not saving $300 a day on electricity. Might be $3 a day, right?
Right.
Maybe not so important.
Yep. So do you do some sort of a discovery phase with somebody that's interested and kind of take a look at their facility? Like, how do you go about the actual process of building a solution?
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, we sell through resellers that are the ones that are actually out there doing that. So they're the ones that are knocking on doors and looking for opportunities. We would connect anybody who's interested with those parties, the right people for that application. But I mean, the process is pretty straightforward. It's, what kind of light fixtures do you have installed today? How are you powering your desks? Usually the answers with AC, regular traditional bricks. How big of a retrofit are you planning on doing? Like, if people are, I think there's a part of the market that's knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, I know you're not even thinking about this, but here's an opportunity. That's less of the people that we tend to approach. And it's more like we're looking for people that are saying, hey, I'm building a new facility, or, hey, it's been 20 years since we really did anything serious to our facility. We're going to do a big overhaul right now. That's the best time for us to get involved. And because I think at the end of the day, there are a lot of low cost control solutions out there that can solve a lot of the problems. Like, I'm not going to, there's no hiding that, right? There are really cheap solutions on the market. At the end of the day, this stuff has become a bit commoditized. So if you just want the cheapest, dirtiest thing you can do, and retrofit it. We're probably not your guys, but we're kind of in the middle there where we're going to set you up for the next 10 or 20 years. You're going to have tons of energy savings and data collection. I think also if people want, if people are looking at, anybody who's looking at that big picture, we really look for people that have some kind of goals beyond just the dollars, whether it's, carbon footprint and these sorts of things. Any kind of ESG goals. I mean, it's almost a dirty word these days. I feel like it's a trigger word, if nothing else. But the reality is people, even manufacturing facilities, right? You have a lot of companies that are putting real energy into reducing the amount of energy they're using in the carbon footprint. I actually didn't know this. I just recently saw Apple's, they do a big report annually on their reduction. They've got this really aggressive goal to get to net zero on carbon. I forget what year, maybe 2030 or something like that, or 35. But it's incredible how much what they're putting into this. And so definitely, if you have any sorts of goals around that, then we're going to make a bigger impact than we would if it's just a pure dollar amount. I guess the last thing, and I'm saying too many words here, but one of the things that this granular control and data collection gets you long term is the ability to leverage the tools that don't exist yet. I mean, we're watching AI and these building management systems evolve super rapidly, right?
Right.
And software is only as good as the hardware that it's running on. And so if you're thinking long term about wanting to build a truly smart building and a smart operation that really is optimizing everywhere you can, then laying the groundwork for that, distributing data throughout the building and having this super granular control and data collection, energy data collection, also fault collection, right? Like if something's not working correctly, we'll notice that and can send alerts through the software, right? So again, having these sort of bigger picture goals and more holistic goals, that's one of the big indicators that we'd be a good fit.
Interesting. So what is the data that we're actually collecting and what can you do with it?
So occupancy data, that's an easy one. So you can see what's getting, where people are, like a heat map basically, right? Super granular as well, like down to 6-second increments. You can see how occupied certain spaces are. Mm-hmm. Theoretically, you could use that to like figure out flows of people and things like that, or even equipment in a building. Okay. But likely you have other ways to do that as well in a manufacturing facility. We've got temperature and humidity data that can be helpful. The light levels, those are all sort of the kind of soft things. But I think the biggest thing is really now it's on the energy usage side of things, all the way down to like laptops and computers. Like we every single one of the ports on our XPOE switch is actually 2 channels that is metered. So like down to every 60 watts in your building will be measuring exactly how much power you're using throughout the day. And I think long term, we're going to start to be able to pull out really interesting insights from that data. Yep. Equipment starting to fail, for example, or if you're running a giant, maybe it's more applicable in an office application, but you've got hundreds and hundreds of laptops that you're managing, right? And you can start to actually see how much energy those laptops are using. We should be able to say, hey, these batteries are actually wearing out, and you start to get into the predictive maintenance mode.
Yeah.
And it's for your operational stuff, right? So again, if you're a manufacturing facility, the thing you care the most about is going to be whatever you're using to build the product that you're selling ultimately. But all this other stuff, it all matters, and it's all a headache for you. So if more information to try to reduce that extra overhead, to try to allow you to focus on your core value prop, that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So you said that they're primarily low voltage stuff, and I know I've talked to some guys that are, monitoring the energy usage of some of the larger machinery in the factory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is that a space that you guys are looking to get into at all, or is it completely
not right now? But I mean, of course we could. We actually what's cool about the way that we do things is it like the energy management platform, we call it the Energy of Things dashboards. I couldn't think of the name.
Okay.
Really, we can take any sort of energy data in, right? And we're collecting just literally billions of data points every year throughout the ecosystem.
Yep.
It's easy for us to throw additional energy meters, third-party meters, or pull information from the building management system for those big loads, right? That are going to be like industrial loads. pull it all into one platform and then ultimately start to, use AI to ask for insights and things like that. So we're like laying the groundwork for that. But our beachhead is more on the, lighting and equipment side of things. But really, it's all the same problem, right? You're looking at, voltage and current, and you can see if things are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's getting easier every day to throw machine learning or AI at these data sets. I mean, basically now, the other day, I literally took a screenshot of the graph. My desk is actually, my monitors are powered by one port on this XPOE switch, and my laptop is powered by a different port. I took a screenshot of the power usage chart over the last 12 hours or something, and it had occupancy in there as well. I just gave it to ChatGPT and I said, one of these is my monitor, one of them's my computer, and it was like, oh, port 7 must be your monitors because the load is much more consistent, and port 8 looks like a charging profile of your laptop, and by the way, it looks like you were actually not in the office, and for 10 minutes your computer stayed on using energy. Like, you should adjust your sleep settings. This is all from one screenshot, right? So the days of hiring like 5 data scientists to build out a super complicated machine learning platform are behind us. And I think we're just beginning this whole race too, right? So I think the value of the data today, it's like, it could be exponential in the future, because we just don't know what we don't know right now. All we know is that things are changing super quickly.
Yeah. Speaking of things changing super quickly, how are you dealing with tariffs? How has that affected you? Because I know kind of trying to have the lower cost price point to allow companies to get into energy monitoring. I would assume there's some overseas production going on. So tell me about that.
Yeah, it's painful, for starters, especially, we had we had a container that like managed to hit right in that 3-week window with 150%. We thought that we were going to get around, like, just the timing was going to work out perfectly. And, when you're paying 100% or more on a product, it's pretty wild to actually pay for the product again and some more before you even get it, right? That was like in the days you were hearing about people abandoning containers worth of product because it just wasn't cost effective to pay the tariffs, right? I think for the most part, if I believe that there should be some tariffs. I think it makes sense to pay something to be offshoring these whatever, manufacturing these parts. When we're in the 30 to 40% range, that's already baked into the math for us. It's when you start doubling when it's 100% or 150% that it gets pretty painful. We go through multiple repricing exercises every year, and we always quote 1 or 2 US manufacturers for some of our stuff. And I hate to say it, but it's like, I'd love to build it in the States. I'd love to be able to just drive to the factory, right? But minimum of 3x and often 5 and sometimes even 10x the price, sourcing these products. And it's really, really difficult for a small company like ours to be able to compete against the big boys that own factories, often overseas as well, and to be able to build a product that's cost effective, right? So if we were building medical equipment, I can see how that could be a different calculus. I think, exactly, right? But we're ultimately selling something that is pretty commoditized. We're competing against cheap drivers that have been manufactured and perfected in China over the last 15 years. And so it's not ideal, but I think the biggest thing that we could get through almost anything if it would just be predictable. Right now, obviously, the sort of volatility and lack of predictability, that's causing the most stress. The fact that every 3 days we have to reassess, that's stressing us out. And I think, as you know, in the manufacturing world as well, you deal with these lead times, which can be, 3 months, 4 months. And the idea that you could order something today that could end up, with a PO from a customer, and by the time it shows up, it might cost 3 times the price, and you have to eat that. That's pretty anxiety-inducing.
It seems like from a legislative standpoint that it would have to be locked in. You know what I mean? Like if it is pre-ordered and you're already you've already quoted that to a customer. There shouldn't be a way that could happen. I just don't
Right.
understand that at all. Is there
It's
any
crazy.
recourse? Like, I mean, is there anyone to call, like, and say,
Not
hey, listen,
really.
I need an exception or an exemption or something like that?
No, the irony, the joke is, of course, that most of the people in the government have been laid off at this point, so there's no one even left to call. But in all seriousness, they're really, I mean, part of the problem with these sort of emergency executive order based approaches is that they're not really well understood, right? And so these are like, it's a 2-page document that says this is the new rule, and I
Right,
mean that needs to be 150 pages minimum to really outline all of these nuances, even before you start to talk about exemptions and stuff.
right,
Yeah, so we have like suppliers, for example, JLC PCB. We work with them all the time. They also do CNC stuff. We often order fully assembled circuit boards, just prototyping for a board that would cost $500 in the States ends up costing $100, landed in like 5 days. It's incredible. And for example, what they started doing was just saying, we're just going to collect 175% tariff on everything and sit on it, and then we'll give it back to you if that doesn't hit. But like, so you're starting to see people say, well, we're just going to err on the side of like the most insane, you know, case, and so
right,
that we're at least covering our bases.
right.
Now, of course, that's tricky to do with customers that are completely removed from the manufacturing side of things. But yeah, look, I would even be fine if we said, look, in 6 months we're going to be dealing with 100% tariffs. Like
Hmm.
that, we could work with. We could come up with a plan, right? I
Yep.
think I think that's what I've seen a lot of executives, even Elon, like asking for is just like, give us a chance to correct, because
Hmm.
otherwise it feels more like a penalty for a decision you made 5 years ago. And again, like, we didn't make this decision because we were like, we're anti-American manufacturing. We made this decision because as a small company, it's really their only option, right?
Right.
And even in a bigger company, a lot of times, these publicly traded companies, sure, they have the cash to invest in American manufacturing, but it's a publicly traded company and it's beholden to the shareholders, which are saying, hey, profit margin, profit margin, profit margin, right? So we've created a system where it's just really tricky to do any of this stuff. And the last thing is on this, like from a time perspective, even if we were assembling the stuff in the States, we live in this world of everything is being sourced from all over the place for when you're
Hmm.
talking about building these computer devices and stuff, especially, right? Like,
Right.
stuff is coming from all over the world, and so no matter what you do, there will be some level of global supply chain sourcing
Yep.
happening,
Yep. Yep.
and you got to be able to plan.
Yep.
It's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it baffles me because, I'm on board for the most part with the things the Trump administration is trying to do. And it seems, on the surface, like the intention was to benefit US manufacturing. And I'm just kind of baffled at how this situation was rolled out so haphazardly, and that there's been no communication to the manufacturers about what to expect, and they're just kind
Yeah.
of flying by the seat of their pants trying to figure it out, moving production over here. Like, even all my US customers, I've got US injection molders, electronics
Hmm.
manufacturers that I generate business for. I saw this huge influx of leads come in at the
Right.
beginning of the year, and they were asked to give all these quotes for jobs. And and I follow up, hey, what happened to this one, this one? Oh, they were only doing that because of the tariffs, but now things are kind of like settled down, and so now they're, they don't actually
Right.
need the quote anymore. So it's just a
Yeah. If
really
anything, it just
weird.
created more work, right? It was like,
Right.
great, we have a bunch of leads, but they're not going to go anywhere because we're just not set up for it, right?
Yeah.
I think
And
you and
even
I
if it
touched
was
on
a
that.
hundred
Yeah.
percent tariff, from what you're saying, is that's not even going to be enough to change the
Nope.
dynamic.
Yeah, we're literally talking about, like, that's challenging for me. But again, like you said, it's not an alternative. It doesn't mean, oh, it's cheaper to build it in the States now. We need 300%, 400% tariffs, and that's just a world of chaos.
Yeah.
That's going to be the soundbite that comes out of this, me asking for 400% tariffs. But no, but the reality, right, is, to your point, it's not even really solving the problem that it purports to solve. I
Right.
think what we've seen, you know, I think we touched on this when we talked last time too. One of the things everybody likes to say, oh, well, it's just cheap labor in China. That's why they can do what they do. I mean, 15 years ago, when we started manufacturing in China, we were going and visiting factories, and like it was a dirt floor, and we're like, this is not acceptable, and having,
Yeah,
that sort of thing was going on. That's not the case anymore. I mean, you
right.
show up and it's just robots everywhere, and people, are working their butts off, to try to keep up with the robots, right? And I talked to my partners over there, and there's lots of people getting laid off, and they're struggling too, right? It's not like they're just sitting over there, Uncle Scrooge with their piles of money. Everybody's fighting to stay competitive in this game,
Yeah.
and China for 15 years now or whatever has had this initiative replacing humans with robots, and that's what the government's been investing in, right? And
Which exactly, I mean, the foresight to do that because they had
yeah,
the labor at that point to throw into it. Now
yeah,
they probably did see the writing on the wall because their population has been pretty dramatically declining, and it's not going
yep,
to get better anytime soon. So they probably knew, but and that's what I always wonder is like if they could see the writing on the wall and from a top level perspective decided to invest in that
yeah,
initiative. And then you look at US manufacturing, and we're like just starting to think, oh, maybe we should try out some automation. Maybe,
right,
well, yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly.
exactly.
Except for, and it's so late now that, like, guess what? If we want to buy any automation tools, we're going to buy them from China because they've a decade ahead of us, right?
Right.
And yeah, and then the reality, whether you believe it's going to happen or not, it is a fact that when you get on a Tesla earnings call and Elon says we're going to be shipping thousands of these humanoid robots that are already doing productive jobs and stuff, like, my biggest fear is that the American manufacturing conversation is going to go quickly from bring it back to America to holy crap, but that means we're giving all our jobs to the robots. And
Hmm.
um, it sounds a little bit crazy today, but the reality is, to your point, the answer is automation. And so, the way we've been doing it just isn't going to work in the
No.
next 20 years, not to be competitive. It's going to have to be a stepwise change, in order for us to stay in the game and for it to make sense.
Right. Yeah, and we got to quit thinking that it's taking people's jobs because
Yeah.
we have a population decline too. We have less
Oh,
people,
exactly.
a smaller percentage of our population that is even interested in working in manufacturing jobs. So,
Yeah.
it's not taking jobs. It's filling in for the humans that don't exist or that don't
Exactly.
want to do the jobs.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we need to kind of think about it more like that.
Yeah.
And
I
there
mean,
is a
Jensen talks about it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, you're fine. Go ahead. You go.
I was just going to say, when Jensen's talking about NVIDIA, he says that, AI is like, it's not taking any jobs. We're using AI more and more every day, which is creating more prosperity, which means we're hiring more people. Like, when you think in the perspective of a company, at the end of the day, you want to be productive. And if these tools make you more productive, then you will be bigger and you will grow and ultimately end up hiring more people, right? They will just be
Right.
different jobs, right? Just like the computer, we didn't need a bunch of secretaries sitting around with typewriters in front of them anymore. That job went away, but these companies continue to grow, and we will evolve. Like, that's what
Yeah.
humans are good at.
Right.
It's just, to your point, having a bit of foresight and saying, hey, what about 10 years from now? I feel like America, we're having a conversation that should have happened 10 years ago. We're finally
Mhm.
having it today. And if we don't start speeding up the conversation, we're going to be continuously stuck a decade or more in the past and just watching the rest of the world leapfrog us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's why I harp on it. I mean, anybody that listens to this podcast, they may get sick of me talking about it because every conversation I'm bringing up automation because I see the writing on the wall and I
Yeah,
see that if you haven't figured out how you're going to incorporate automation and robotics into your facility, no matter how small, no matter how custom your process is, I do not think you're going to be in business in 5 years. I
yeah,
think it's moving that quickly. And if you just cannot produce a part at a, you know, even at a 100% more than what they can do overseas,
yeah.
maybe you're getting away with that just because the convenience and shipping costs and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But it's just not going to last.
Even 2x, right? Like, okay, we don't have to worry about that extra bit of shipping. I mean, we recently had a shipment that it ended up being the last mile, the UPS guys that did it, but it ended up sitting out in the rain. Like, these are all headaches that can be eliminated if you were able to build it locally. So sure,
Right.
we'll pay a premium, right? But I think my theory is that American manufacturing is still around because of companies like SpaceX and even healthcare and these and government contracts. Like these guys just don't care about price the way that companies like mine do, right?
Right.
And so they're willing to pay, and they're sure they can get it a little bit faster in a lot of cases because it's local, and they can literally fly a helicopter from Denver to Florida or whatever is needed. But that's created this world of what feels like easy money for our manufacturing companies, and it's created an illusion that, like, actually, if we keep creating premium products, people will buy them locally. And I don't think that that's sustainable. I don't think
Mhm.
that even if it works in a small market, it's just like any business, right? If you have one great customer, any consultant, the first thing they're going to say is you need more customers because
Right.
that
Yep.
customer could go away tomorrow.
Yep.
And that's how I feel about it. I think, like I said, government contracts, and then these companies where even space travel, right? It's going to continue to get commoditized. So it's going to just get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it's going to be such a race that it's not going to be acceptable to pay a premium for these parts anymore.
Right.
The other soapbox I've got on this is the one thing that's made America America and successful and prosperous in the last 30, 50 years is innovation and
Mhm.
these small companies and building intellectual property. I mean, at the end of the day, we're the ones designing the chips, and yeah, they're made in Taiwan, but we've been the ones building them for years.
Right.
And if there's anything that I think we should be tripling down on, it's figuring out how to keep America winning at the thing we've been really good at. It's
Mhm.
like, it's almost, to me, it seems silly. It's like, oh, China's doing a really good job of manufacturing. Well, ultimately, we don't need to be doing that necessarily. I'm not saying that's the wrong thing, but I'm just not sure it's the right thing. And
Mhm.
and for a company, a small startup that wants to build hardware, there's just like we have to leverage. I don't see a way to not do that, or to do that without leveraging this global community. I mean, we
Right.
use Fiverr and gig workers all over the world to do these quick tasks that for $100 that would cost 10 grand to have done here, and then
Yep.
building prototypes that can come quickly and are cheap, and not having to make, sometimes American manufacturing can get close, but it tends to require like $1 million PO, for example, and then sure, we'll send you 100 pieces, but now you're on the hook for $1 million. And this
Yep.
just is it. What it's going to end up doing is stifling our ability as a nation to be innovative and to
Mhm.
create new products, if we're not careful, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's what public investment does. I mean, that's what happens when the government gets involved in economic markets,
Hmm.
inside of the domestic economic market. Because basically, what you're saying is they've sort of propped up manufacturing with public dollars,
Yeah,
which, obviously there's good there and there's bad there, but the bad side is that it does stifle innovation because if you can keep making money doing what you're doing without getting better, then why
yeah,
would you? But then on the other hand, you do need some of that because we do need critical infrastructure. We do need some
100%.
level
Yeah.
of manufacturing here. So some of that does need to happen, but it might be being overdone.
Or how it's done might be the thing too, right? And I'm not an expert on exactly how the public dollars are flowing in there, but I'm pretty sure that what we've been doing is different than how China's been using their public dollars, right?
Right. Yep.
And that ultimately is, I think, like you said, if you're actually propping up like a system that is not sustainable, rather than using those funds to invest in something that will be sustainable long term,
Yep.
those are two really different choices, and it can give you a false sense of confidence that
Yep.
ultimately just, yeah, that bubble will pop.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and I struggle with it too because, when I work with a lot of contract manufacturers in the US, like I said, the injection molders, fabrication,
Yeah.
machining. Um, and the question is what do they do? Obviously we can automate our place as much as possible. We can put in tools to monitor our electricity, cut costs as much as we can. When we do all that, we're still
Right.
not going to compete on price.
Right.
So what do we do? And I do like what you said about innovation, about creating something new, intellectual property, but I just wonder, what did they do, you know? And one thing I encourage them to do is to develop your own product, you
Right.
know, and you already have the machinery, you already have the design knowledge, and you can make a pretty competitively priced product if you can think of a good idea and make it.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I think is a good suggestion. Like, what else do you think they could be doing?
Yeah, that's a good one. I hadn't thought of that, but I've seen, even just Instagram ads over the years, these companies that have done that. I think it's really cool. I think that I don't have all the answers, but I think that, doubling down on the innovation, that there could be a strategy, some kind of partnership structure, and where it's maybe there's even equity involved. Like, it gets complicated quickly, but basically sort of a way to make a product as a company that doesn't know how to make products would be to partner with companies that do make products and figure out how to have a stake in their long-term success without trying to squeeze all of your profit margin out in the early days, right?
Right,
Um, I think that's a big part of how China operates. In the end, it's all a volume play for them, and so but they're willing to do almost anything for the first five pieces to get ordered, because they know that if you get those five pieces done, there's a good chance of you ordering another 1,000 and 10,000 if you're successful. I think that's a subtle thing that people don't realize about what China's done, is the way their salespeople think and operate. They're very much they communicate as partners, and they're like, "Hey, I'm your friend, and I want to help you be successful here." And I'm not saying that every U.S. manufacturer isn't doing that, but I have much more of a feeling of like somebody selling me a house, or like
right.
car
A
salesman, right? Like,
commodity,
yeah,
yeah,
car salesman's your buddy, but at the end of the day, it doesn't feel the same as somebody who's like, hey, I'm going to help set you up for a 10-year
right.
plan here, and we'll
You're,
help work with you on the design. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I can relate to it very much because I've actually moved my own business to that model pretty heavily in the past couple of years here. Because traditionally someone would want search engine optimization, like, hey, I'm a machine shop.
Yeah.
I got my AS9100 certification. I want to get more aerospace customers. Okay, great. Let's make sure that when somebody Googles AS9100 certified machine shop, you're at the
You
top
pop
of the
up.
list.
Yeah.
So that's one example. So traditionally they've hired me to do this on a retainer basis. We charge them a
Yeah.
monthly fee. So I got to thinking about it, and we've been so successful at generating leads. I said, I wonder how I could structure this more like a partnership. So what I ended up doing was reducing that fee dramatically and then putting a fixed time limit on it. And so I'll say,
Cool.
you pay me this reduced fee for 12 months. After that, commission only. So when you close a deal, I get 5% of that deal. And
Cool.
people love it because they, less upfront costs. And I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm saying, hey, I know I'm going to make this work because I have to make it work in 12 months.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. That's the other edge of that sword, right? Is you're in it now too, in a way that
yeah,
I mean, not that you weren't necessarily before, but for the sake of this conversation, right? As a manufacturing partner, you're not just trying to sell the most, or get the highest revenue in the near term. You're
right,
working with the company to figure out how to make this thing cost effective and reliable
right,
and all of that, because that will make you successful long term, right?
right,
And just, I mean, I think we've danced around it a couple of times, but it's like, or through different avenues here, but it's this long-term thinking that I just don't think we've been doing a good job of as
right.
Americans.
Yep.
You start saying, hey, what about 5 years from now? What about 10 years from now? What about 30 years from now, right? Or
Yep.
even 100 years. And I think that's something that we've seen other countries really thinking about and
Hmm.
investing in, and other cultures. And there are of course people doing that in the States. Don't get me wrong, but the reality is it's just not commonplace. But I'm
Right.
seeing more of it. We're raising capital right now, and as I reach out to investors, I end up getting a lot of people that are basically brokers or people that are out there trying to help me raise capital. And I'm
Hmm.
starting to see more and more of these innovative models where people are saying, look, I won't charge you anything up front, but when you raise money, we'll take 3% or 5%.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Or I'll charge you now and then I'll pay it back as soon as you raise money, and
Yep.
for that retainer piece, and I'll take a commission on the top. At the
Yep.
end of the day, if there's money to be shared, then people are a lot more likely to want to share it.
Right.
When there's no money, like it sucks because it's a death spiral, right? And okay, so now that guy couldn't afford you to do his SEO optimization, which meant that he didn't get those leads, and this is no good. One
Yep.
plus one can be three here. We got to get out of the zero sum thinking mentality and really say like, hey, what if we both work on this together? What could we build? And hey, when we're successful, we can all be successful then.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I heard, and you probably know more about this than I do, but I heard that the manufacturers in China are a little bit more collaborative with each other. And I can't even put words into it because it's been a long time since I heard it, but it made me think about a way that I encourage manufacturers in the U.S. to be. And a lot of my customers will get a lead through their website. They get 5 leads in a day. Only one of those is of interest to them. And so
Right.
they say to the other four, we're just going to no quote this, like, sorry. And I said, well, why don't you look through your Rolodex and say, you know what, I actually have a guy over here that can do that.
Right.
And then why don't you have a relationship set up with him so that you can make a percentage of profit,
Yeah.
when they close that deal. And so you could be the magnet, and then you can distribute these leads as they come into who they make the most sense. And so I started telling them, listen, send them to me because I know every type of
Right.
manufacturer. Like, send them to
Yeah.
me. I'm going to
You've
work
got
out
the
these deals and
Rolodex.
make it happen.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of the manufacturing community is very they're segmented. They protect everything so tightly, and they're like, well, if I'm not going to get it, nobody else is going to get it. And it's like, well, somebody else is going to get it.
Somebody's going to get it. Yeah.
Be in control of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And even just as simple as like, if you give that guy leads, he's probably going to give you a lead.
Right.
And, really kind of knowing where your wheelhouse starts and stops. Right. And I do think I've experienced that. I think that there's a lot of, I'll use an anecdote. When in the last 2 years, we also explored manufacturing in India. And part of that was diversifying. Part of it was we have a really good partner there. And the first thing we noticed was something that we had noticed in the States as well, where it felt like everything was just harder. Like in China, I've gotten so used to saying like, hey, we want to add wire nuts that look like this to the packaging. The next day, okay, I got a quote from 2 different guys and here it is. And whatever,
Mm-hmm.
This one's a little less orange. Do you want to pick that one? It's cheaper. And like that sort of ecosystem of people working together and
Right.
bringing each other in is
Right.
like, it's so easy and fast in China. And part of that is just like they have the infrastructure now, right? And so there
Right.
are 15 wire nut companies. I think there's been more intention there. I don't think it's just like an evolved thing. I think that there has been some intention in the way that these companies have been structured. They even like, I don't know if you've been to China, but you walk through these like giant malls that are like these marketplaces, right? And they're all clustered. The companies that are doing the same thing are all in the same section, like directly competing with each other. And
Okay.
they do this thing where I haven't been to Shenzhen since 2016, so it's probably a whole new world. But I had an experience in this one area. We were looking at light fixtures, and I was like, well, I need this, but I need it in a 4-inch can instead of a 6-inch can. And the dude's like, 1 sec. And he runs to another booth, and then he comes back. Like, he goes sprinting across the thing, and he comes back, and I'm like, who's that guy? And he's like, oh, yeah, he's like a cousin or something, whatever. It's a completely different vendor, but ultimately it didn't matter because he was the one who brought the sale, right? And I don't know exactly what the structure is, but there was so much of that. There's always this idea of like, well, I can get it from over here.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I read this book. I was actually trying to find it before this call, but I couldn't find it. I listened to might have been Blink on Blinkist or something, but it was like the five Chinese words you need to know to understand the culture. And one of them is the word that effectively means copycat. And it was a really interesting book. Maybe we could find it later and link it. But the way they think about copying stuff, like we see it, I mean, it's a dirty word for us, right? And of course, it's one of our biggest criticisms of China as a partner, is they just rip off all our stuff.
Right.
But for them, it's like a cultural mandate. Like it's built in that like if it can be copied, then it will be copied and it should be copied. And I think I think at first glance it's like that's a huge pain in everybody's butt. But the second side of that is it creates a sort of like less of that sort of cage thing like you're talking about, trying to protect, like, someone else can do it, so now you have to deliver on the service and the communication and all of these
Right.
other pieces that really make, like, why are you really that differentiated?
Right.
And in America, like, we have to keep staying ahead on ideas because we're the ones that come up with ideas and China will copy them, right? And so it's constantly staying there. But I think that, like, whatever, that's a long-winded way of saying, I think partially, or I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think I've seen it in action. And ultimately, okay, I know the other thing I was going to say. As a small company, knowing that when I work with a CM, like, they know they have a guy for everything, whether it's the label or the packaging or whatever. And it's like I can have one point of contact and put an entire product together, all the way to the end. And that is the value that they're really providing, right? They have a list of people. Yeah,
that's a great point. Yeah, so that is the other thing that we were looking for, that our contract manufacturers can do, is be more of a comprehensive solution. And don't just say the word solution. Everybody likes to say that on their website.
Yeah.
Your precision solution. Yeah. Okay. No, but honestly, like, be able to get them to the right resource, pick up the slack on communication, reach out and actually kind of source the things that they need to complete their product instead of just being a machine shop or just being an injection molding.
Yeah, because that puts the burden on the company, who often doesn't know what they're doing, right? I mean, when we're talking about small companies and we're talking about the long game, we're talking about companies that are going to be wildly successful in 5 to 10 years. They don't have don't have a whole team dedicated to manufacturing, right? And with expertise in that. So that's the value you can provide today that will create a partnership that will go on for a long time. I think that's game changing. And it's the same thing, right? Also not trying to mark it all up 100%. And like, you're not going to make money on every single one of those things necessarily. You're going to have to figure out where you're going to make your money. And then you're going to have to provide these additional, whatever features or value add services, just to keep the business, right? Because that's the kind of stuff where I would love to, like you said, I think maybe the benchmark is twice the price. Maybe it's even 2.5 to 3 times in a lot of industries of what it would cost to build it overseas, where it becomes, we could hit that number, then the other benefits are going to be, maybe will outweigh the challenges, right? Exactly. Time zone, ease of communication style, culture clash, like ability to fly there or them to fly to our office or whatever, right? Like, all those things are great. There's some balance there, but in the meantime, we have to at least replicate what everyone else is doing really well. It's not just cost. Like, I think that's my biggest message these days to people is, like, guys, it's not just about them being cheaper. Like, we get a better product. It's more reliable. Like, they solve all of our problems, right? This is not just that we're trying to cut corners and cut costs. Like, we're actually getting a better solution in a lot of cases than what we could get from the States.
Right. So there's a lot of lessons. I mean, there's a lot of lessons we can learn from not just writing China off as a pain in our butts. We can really start to replicate some of what they're doing. No, I mean, I think it's all really, really great advice. Very, very interesting. And, honestly, if we can get to that 100, 150% benchmark, then you have a case to make to Americans when you say buy American. When you're 500 times the cost, you can't make that case. But if you're, if that cost ends up being, that extra 100% manufacturing cost turns into an extra 20% in the product cost, you can make that case.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a bit of reliability or a bit of, you can do easier. Exactly. All that stuff comes into play. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, very interesting conversation, Sebastien. I'm sure we could go on for hours, but
sure.
I appreciate the time you took to do this with us today, and I think you had some great insights that a lot of people can learn from.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Nate. It was fun.